All right, we're following breaking news this morning out of Lancaster, where the district attorney's office is providing an update on Sunday's Park City Center shooting.
There are still a lot of unanswered questions, including a possible motive. So we are now taking you live to that news conference happening at the Lancaster County Courthouse, where officials are releasing new information.
To my left, I have First Assistant Todd Brown. Next to him, I have Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Panessa of our Major Crimes Unit. Attorney Panessa was assigned to this investigation and will be prosecuting the charges. On my right, I have Captain Mike Winters from the Lancaster City Bureau of Police. Then we have Detective Stan Roche, Lancaster City Bureau of Police, investigating officer and affiant, and Lieutenant Chris Laser, also of the Lancaster City Bureau of Police. We are here today to announce that charges have been filed against a 16-year-old juvenile involved in the shooting incident at Park City Center on Sunday, October 17th. No charges will be filed on the armed civilian who intervened to dissolve the situation. 16-year-old Jeremiah Sanchez of Lancaster has been charged with 2 counts of criminal attempt homicide, 3 counts of aggravated assault, 52 counts of recklessly endangering another person, and 1 count each of person not to possess a firearm, firearms not to be carried without a license, possession of a firearm by a minor, and receiving stolen property. The charges were filed this morning before Magisterial District Judge Andrew Lefevre. Sanchez was charged as an adult pursuant to Pennsylvania law due to the nature and grading of the lead offenses. Sanchez, of course, is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. At this time, he does remain in the hospital under police guard, and he will be arraigned with bail set at a later time. As you know, police were dispatched at approximately 2:26 in the afternoon on Sunday, October 17th, to reports of a shooting at Park City Center. The shooting resulted in approximately 50 calls to 911. The Lancaster City Bureau of Police responded, secured the scene, and immediately began coordinating an investigation. Investigators identified dozens of witnesses who were either still on the scene or who had left prior to the arrival of police, and conducted numerous interviews of victims, witnesses, and employees of the Park City Mall. The 50 people that called 911 were also contacted by investigators to try to identify additional eyewitnesses to the shooting. Evidence specialists spent hours carefully processing the scene for evidence, meaning documenting, photographing, and collecting every piece of evidence. Investigators collected hours of video footage from various sources, including video from Park City surveillance cameras, individual store video, as well as personal video footage recorded by cell phones or other means. All of this video footage has been reviewed, which has allowed investigators to piece together the events prior to the shooting, through the incident, and the response by first responders. Based on the evidence gathered during the investigation, police allege that the incident began when an 18-year-old male identified as Elijah DeLees observed 16-year-old Jeremiah Sanchez and 3 other subjects walking into the JCPenney wing of the mall. DeLees confronted Sanchez, which led to a physical altercation near the Reed's jewelry store, with both subjects essentially wrestling on the ground. During the altercation, the subjects who had accompanied Sanchez and another person with DeLees, identified as 30-year-old Sergio Vargas, also got involved in the altercation, which lasted approximately 1 minute and 15 seconds. At that time, Sanchez became separated from DeLees, pulled a concealed handgun from his waistband, and fired 2 shots toward DeLees. According to police, the weapon Sanchez possessed was allegedly stolen in Lebanon County. The first shot fired by Sanchez struck DeLees in the thigh, while the second shot struck an uninvolved 30-year-old female in the arm who was approximately 70 feet down the Penny's Mall, standing next to a child. Sanchez is charged with 1 count of attempted homicide of DeLees and 1 count of attempted homicide for the female victim. And just as a brief explanation, essentially In the eyes of the law, if you intend to kill or harm someone and you miss and hit someone else, then you are presumed to have tended that result as well. At the time these two shots were fired by Sanchez, there were approximately 52 uninvolved civilians in proximity to the incident, including men, women, and several children. Another civilian who was lawfully carrying a legally owned firearm was shopping in another store with his wife when he heard the shots. He told his wife to go in the other direction as he proceeded to go in the direction of the shots. When he arrived at the JCPenney corridor, he observed Sanchez and Vargas continuing to struggle on the ground. He also observed DeLees on the ground in the middle of the mall and heard him repeatedly say that he had been shot. The civilian had his weapon drawn at a lowered ready position or down at an angle towards the ground. At that time, Sanchez fired another shot that is believed to have struck both himself and Vargas in the hand. This caused Vargas to roll off of him and yell that he had been shot. That same shot then struck a wall less than a foot away from the armed civilian. Immediately after Sanchez fired, the civilian immediately fired 3 shots, believing that he and others were in danger of death or serious bodily injury. Sanchez's gun came to rest on the floor next to him. After shooting, the civilian then approached Sanchez, kicked the firearm out of distance, and held Sanchez at gunpoint until others arrived. Based on these circumstances, it is absolutely clear that the civilian had a reasonable belief that he and others were in danger of death or serious bodily injury, and therefore his actions are justified under the law. We are very fortunate that more people were not hurt. The armed civilian's actions were not only justified under the law, but potentially and likely prevented others from serious injury or death. This incident certainly could have been much worse. So to summarize and to put the incident in context from the beginning of the altercation until the shots were fired by the civilian was approximately 2 minutes. During that time, 6 shots were fired by 2 different people. The first shots were fired by Sanchez, striking DeLees and another uninvolved female. The third shot, which came after the fight, so a minute and 15 plus later, was fired by Sanchez and we believe struck both himself and Vargas. The other 3 shots were then fired by the civilian. All shots are accounted for, and any account that there was a third shooter is simply unsupported by any of the evidence that we have in the investigation. I want to emphasize this. Gun violence anywhere is unacceptable, but it is particularly unnerving when it happens on a Sunday afternoon in a crowded shopping mall filled with vulnerable children, families, and seniors. It is equally disturbing that the shooter was a 16-year-old juvenile who was armed with a stolen gun. The entire incident that led to the safety of innocent civilians being put in danger is simply outrageous, and we are committed to seeing that justice will be served. The investigation is ongoing at this point, and we will continue to look closely at the conduct of those involved in the initial altercation. I want to thank the Lancaster City Bureau of Police and other assisting agencies for their quick response on Sunday and securing the scene so quickly. I also want to thank First Assistant Brown and ADA Panessa for assisting in the time-consuming process of reviewing all of the evidence in this case. Before I take questions, I want to turn it over briefly to Captain Winters.
Thank you. I just have some brief comments on behalf of Chief John Bay, who's unable to be here today, but he asked me to extend his comments. On behalf of the Lancaster Bureau of Police, I'd like to extend well wishes of a speedy recovery to the victims who were injured during this senseless shooting. I'd also like to personally thank the following agencies for their immediate response and support: the Pennsylvania State Police, Troop J Lancaster, Manheim Township Police Department, Manor Township Police Department, and the East Hempfield Township Police Department. and also 3 off-duty police officers who were on the scene. I'd also like to commend LEMSA, the Lancaster City Fire Department, and the Park City Mall Security for their quick response and decisive actions to provide first aid for those who were injured. I also want to thank the officers of my own police bureau for their immediate and timely response to a situation that could have turned out far worse. They immediately secured the scene and coordinated the efforts of other responding agencies to a successful conclusion. Please know that I appreciate the professionalism displayed, and I do not take them for granted. Unfortunately, a situation such as this is a reminder that people need to remain ever vigilant of their surroundings and be prepared to take action to keep themselves safe. And I'd also like to thank the district attorney and the assistant DAs that assisted us with this investigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Could you talk more, do you have any more information on the stolen gun? You said it was out of Lebanon, but when that incident may have occurred?
It was stolen in approximately September of this year.
Is he the one who's accused of stealing it, or did he come into possession?
No, he's only accused of possessing a stolen weapon.
Can you tell us anything that might have led to the initial altercation?
That part of the investigation is still ongoing, still trying to speak to certain people. So at this point, I can't give any more details on that.
There have been some speculation it might have been over sneakers. Is that anything to that? Or?
We don't have anything to suggest that at this point.
Do you know if it's against small rules to have a gun?
So that's a good question. The question's come up a lot in the past week. The mall, it's my understanding that the mall is privately owned, and they do have a policy, and it is posted, that patrons are not to possess weapons. However, that is a policy only. It does not trump the law in this. So any civilian that can legally possess a firearm, has a license to carry, is not violating a criminal law by being in the mall with a weapon. The mall could obviously try to enforce that civilly, give him notice not to come back, that type of thing.
Why did it take you all 5 days to publicly speak about the shooting?
Well, sir, the investigation's still ongoing. So I'm not sure what you mean about a public speaking about the incident, because the Lancaster City Bureau of Police did issue a statement within an hour of the shooting, indicating that the scene was secured and that there was no threat to the public. The district attorney's office then confirmed, I think approximately an hour later, so 2 hours after the incident, that there was a shooting, that the investigation was ongoing, and again, that there was no threat to the public.
Did the civilian shots hit anybody else? Out of his 3 shots, did it hit anybody else?
The civilian shots?
Mm-hmm.
So again, to put it in context, this was not 6 shots all at once. 2 shots were initially fired at the end of the altercation, which had lasted approximately a minute and 15 seconds. The civilian was not in the area at that time. So he proceeds to go to where the shots were fired. The final shot by SANCHEZ is then fired. He immediately fires 3 shots. We have no evidence to indicate, in fact, we can say that those shots are accounted for. We do believe, well, we can say this, that SANCHEZ has injuries to his elbow, to his hand, and an abrasion to his face. But all of those shots were in one direction, and there was no one else in the vicinity that was hit by gunfire.
So is that to say that the civilian shots fired by the civilian struck SANCHEZ?
We believe that at this point, yes.
All 3 shots?
We don't know that.
Okay.
It's unclear that his facial wound is even a gunshot wound.
Okay.
And we also had evidence to believe that the other shot was, his other injury is from his own shot.
Okay. Can you, obviously you're not going to give us the civilian's name, but can you tell us anything about him? I mean, to have that calmness and wherewithal, be holding the gun down and respond. Did he have military or law enforcement background?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I watched his interview, but I can't speak to his background. What was the other part of your question?
No, I forget. Well, how about this? Regardless of what the policy may be, was he aware? Did he know if he could bring a gun in or not? Did he? I mean, those signs are very small and down low. He might not have seen it.
Well, so again, that's only policy. It doesn't prohibit anyone from carrying
Okay.
a lawfully owned weapon and someone that has a license to carry. It's policy only.
Okay.
Doesn't trump the law. Not a criminal violation.
Could you talk about just maybe the uniqueness of this case? You mentioned that there was just so much video from the mall security to bystanders, how that helped in the investigation.
So I think more and more these days, we're seeing cases with digital evidence and video evidence. Because as you've probably seen and had access to, there were a lot of people who pulled out their cell phones, and that evidence takes time to review. There was mall video, there was kiosk video, and that greatly assists law enforcement in piecing this all together. But I will say this, it was time consuming because it wasn't all recorded on one piece of video. So we had audio for some other shots we didn't have audio, but they were from a different angle. So all in all, I would say 98% of the incident was covered, but it took a lot of time to go through.
And were there any challenges with the investigation as a whole? Any?
I would say in any investigation like this, when you have multiple people involved, we would still like to speak with certain people.
Two-part question here. I know you said that Sanchez is still in the hospital under custody, but do you have any more details on those, if anyone else is still in the hospital, anyone else injured, those type of details, as well as could there be additional charges put forth?
So all of these shooting victims have been discharged with the exception of Sanchez. And as I said earlier, the investigation is ongoing. We will be looking very closely at additional charges, and if that comes to fruition, we will announce that at a later time.
And then I guess the other shooting victims who were released from the hospital, that would have been the other teen involved in the...
That's correct.
What were the extent of his injuries?
So the first person shot was DeLees. He was shot in the thigh. And then the second person who was involved in the scuffle, if you will, was Vargas, and he had a gunshot injury to his hand, but both non-life-threatening.
Can you tell us, was the intervener, is he from Lancaster in a ballpark age range?
I think we have him as 50. I do not know where he's from. I will share this. I watched his interview with the police afterwards. He was cooperative, but he was distraught. He was visibly distraught at the entire situation. He expressed concern for the juvenile. He realized after the shots were fired, because they were on the ground, and he realized his age, or approximate age, that he was a young kid, as he said, and that was very upsetting for him. So it was a traumatic experience for him. And I could tell he was wrestling with the decision that he made and the choice that he felt that he had to make. But it was definitely a traumatic event for him.
And again, as you said, it could have been much worse. On that point, there were a lot of other people running, tripping, falling. Do you know the extent of any injuries for other people? I had a friend who said their niece broke an ankle. Do you have any ballpark on that kind of stuff?
I don't have that information, but I believe if to the extent that people were injured, I think we would ask them to report that to Lancaster City Police.
You spoke on this a little bit, but if you could underscore just the wherewithal this armed citizen had. I mean, he made the choice to tell his wife to get away from the gunfire, and he walked toward the gunfire. And regardless of whether we find out he had a police or military background or not, you have to have a lot of bravery and courage to do something like that.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think you said it in your question. Something he did not have to do, but felt compelled that he could be there and help. And I think he absolutely, and we've talked about this and we all agree with this, absent him being there, this could have been a much worse situation. And it's very likely that other people could have suffered serious injury or death.
Can you explain Sanchez's injuries? You said his hand, an abrasion to his face, his elbow. Are any of those from the scuffle, or were all of those related to gunshots? How severe are they?
Preliminary, I believe it's anticipated that at least 2 are gunshot wounds, but we can't say the third with the face abrasion is.
Which ones were the gunshots?
So the elbow and the hand.
Elbow in the hand.
Have police been able to speak with Sanchez, and can you share anything of what he said? Has he taken any sort of responsibility, or has he been cooperative?
So I can't comment. He is charged, so I can't comment on that.
Question, and I don't know if it would differ because he is a juvenile. Does he have a criminal record or a criminal past?
So you will see in the complaint, which I didn't bring with me, he is charged with a person not to possess a firearm, which means he does have certain previous adjudications, felony adjudications that would prohibit him from possessing a firearm. He's also a juvenile and can't possess anyway, but I'm not going to go into any more detail at this point. Okay, thank you very much for coming, appreciate it. If you haven't met Sean McBrien yet, the new media specialist for the District Attorney's Office, he's here. He does have the written release for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, typing with one hand.
Oh, you were just watching a press conference. That was Heather Adams, Lancaster County District Attorney. They were just announcing that authorities have charged 16-year-old Jeremiah Sanchez with a slew of charges, including 2 counts of criminal attempted homicide. DA Adams did say that he is being charged as an adult. He's in the hospital right now recovering from 2 bullet shot wounds. He will be arraigned, I guess, at a later date, she said.
And we did also hear this was a big question surrounding this when it came to the shopper who was a legally armed shopper who also fired shots at the suspect. A lot of people were wondering if he was going to be charged or not, what that situation was going to be like. The DA did make the announcement that that person, who we're not getting the full identity, but at this point we know a 50-year-old man, will not be criminally charged. At one point, DA Adams even said that the armed civilian's actions were not only justified under the law, but potentially and likely prevented others from serious injuries or death. And she also mentioned there were about 50 people, men, women, and children, in the area when this whole shooting took place.
Yeah, she also talked about how distraught he was from watching the video, which was just very intriguing to listen to. But she said the entire thing only happened, it was about 2 minutes long. More than 50 people that were there called 911 to report what was going on. She also said there was nothing to suggest a third shooter. And of course, we're going to be following this throughout the day and the rest of the weekend, I guess, and we'll bring the very latest to you on air at Fox 43 News, first at 4.
Absolutely. And for now, we're going to go over to meteorologist Danielle Miller with a check of that forecast.